Mali is the 8th largest country in Africa. It is located in West Africa, has an area of over 1.2 million square kilometers, and population of 19 million. The economy of the country focuses on agriculture and mining. Besides, one of the country's most prominent natural resources is gold. It is actually the 3rd largest producer of gold on the continent of Africa. This sounds very promising, but what you might not know is that the people of Mali are protesting. Do you wonder why? Well, keep watching! Welcome to the Ecocation channel, where we keep you informed of all major politics and economic subjects worldwide. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Thousands of people in Mali have joined a government-sponsored rally in Mali's capital, Bamako, to protest against new regional economic sanctions and growing pressure from former colonizer France after Mali's military ruler pushed back promised elections by 4 years. But why does former colonizer France want to pressure sanctions against Mali? What exactly is the relationship between Mali and France? To understand this relation, we have to dig into the history of France and Mali. The history of France and Mali goes back to 1892, when Mali fell under French colonial rule. In 1893, the French appointed a civilian governor of the territory they called Soudan Francois, or French Sudan, but active resistance to the French rule continued. By 1905, most of Mali was under French control. On September 22, 1960, the former Sudanese Republic became the Republic of Mali. But a continuously deteriorating economy led to a decision to rejoin the France zone in 1967 and recover the economic excess they had then. On November 19, 1968, a group of young officers staged a bloodless coup, and they set up a 14-member military committee for national liberation, which stands for CMLN. That was the first coup since the Republic of Mali joined the France zone. The leaders of CMLN attempted to pursue economic reforms, but for several years they faced deliberating internal political struggles, which resulted in a loss for the leaders of the coup. After the first coup, there have been multiple attempts to create new institutions, but unfortunately it did not succeed. But in January 2012, there was another attempt by the National Movement of Liberation of Azawad, which stands for MNLA. On March 22, 2012, the rebel troops from the military appeared on state TV, announcing they had seized the control of the country. Unfortunately, the former president of Mali was forced into hiding. Nonetheless, due to the insurgency in northern Mali in 2012, the military government controls only the southern third of the country, leaving the northern part of the country, which is known as Azawad, to the MNLA rebels. In response to these actions, the Economic Community of West African States, which stands for ECOWAS, froze assets and imposed an embargo, which resulted in some with only days of fuel. Mali is heavily dependent on fuel imports trucked overland from Ivory Coast and Senegal. Later that year in June, the MNLA came into conflict with the Islamist groups Ansar Dine and the Movement for Oneness and Jihad in West Africa, which stands for MOJWA. The Islamist group began imposing Sharia in Azawad. As a result, Mali's interim president asked for military assistance from French in January 2013. Because the Mali government were fearing that the armed forces of the government would not be up to the task of holding off the assault of the rebels. That caused Operation Barkhane, the rapid deployment of French power, special forces, and in later stage, ground assaults on rebel strongholds in Mali's inhospitable north had a decisive effect. Within a number of months, the rebels were defeated, the most important northern cities of Mali were retaken, and approximately half of the estimated 2,000 rebels were killed or captured. Of course, France did not operate alone. The EU training mission was authorized in 2013, and an African-led international support mission Mali, which stands for AFISMA, had been set up. On top of that, the United Nations backed the operation and provided funding. But still, after retaking the most important northern cities, France had interest in Mali and its neighbors, primarily economic and security related. For example, France is responsible for safeguarding the uranium mines just over the border in Niger. Besides, France wanted to prevent that Mali's failed, from which terrorists and insurgents could further threaten region stability and potentially strike at France of its interests in Africa. Less than 9 years later, France has handed over its Timbuktu base to Malian forces, which resulted that the mood of Mali changed into bitterness and anxiety. But if looking a couple hundred kilometers away in Mali's capital, Bamako, you can still see that the presence of France is still very strong. On the contrary, Russian flags are also visible. How is that possible? while the French-led Operation Barkhane has failed to conquer the jihad threat in Mali and the Sahel region. Malian leaders have vocally criticized the French strategy to have their approximate 5,000-strong military presence because that worsened the conflict. Mali has turned to Russia. This shift has consequences for France. Mali's interim Minister of Trade and Commerce, Mamoud Ould Mohamed, said the relationship is broken right now. Also, Malian Prime Minister Choguel Maïga said that France has abandoned Mali, leaving Mali with no other choice than to seek other partners. Now Bamako is in talks to hire mercenaries from the Kremlin-linked Wagner Group. Of course, these talks have infuriated France. After 2 coups d'etats in Bamako in less than a year, France is convinced that the Malian government lacks legitimacy, and on top of that, the partnership with the Wagner Group could jeopardize a fight against the rebels, who are responsible for thousands of killings across Sahel. In June 2021, the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, announced that France will draw down on Barkhane forces. He has argued that the French military, which has lost 53 soldiers, can no longer compensate for the non-work of Mali. At the same time, France has made a series of strategic decisions that have rankled the Malians. Over the past 2 years, France has changed their focus to the more brutal Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, which stands for ISGD, in the tri-border region between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, instead of Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, which stands for JNIM, and is the consortium of al-Qaeda-linked groups that caused a vast majority of violence in Mali. According to a West diplomat, Mali is wondering why France changed their focus to ISGS because ISGD is about 10% of the problems and JNIM is about 90%. It is clear that Malians lost their faith in France and the ECOWAS members. They feel abandoned by them, and as a result they tried to find other partnerships, for example, Russia. But why are Malians shouting down with imperialism, down with ECOWAS, and down with France? Macron has made it clear that he wants to break Franco-Afrique, the system of closed commercial, economic, and political ties that had defined the relationship since independence. But apparently, ECOWAS and France have no intentions yet of breaking ties with Mali. The ECOWAS leader denounced the new time frame, saying it simply means that an illegitimate military transition government will take the Malaysian people hostage during the next 5 years. They insist on new elections, but the rulers of Mali's military pushed back the promised elections. In order to push new elections, France and the ECOWAS have imposed new sanctions. These new sanctions will effectively freeze the Republic of Mali's assets in commercial banks. On top of that, most ECOWAS members have also stopped all air traffic to and from Bamako. But according to Jamil Batar, a Malian politician who supported Goïta's government, these sanctions will have no consequences for Mali. France has betrayed us, and we call on our authorities to break off diplomatic relations with France. Also, Goïta has made sure to Malians on national television that the country won't suffer supply chain woes due to the closure of the borders. Besides, Goïta insists that it is impossible to organize elections as originally promised because of the deepening insecurities. What changed now is that extremists have expanded their reach far into central Mali over the past few years, and they frequently target UN peacekeepers and Malian soldiers. But critics of his regime say he did not make enough effort and wants to extend his time in power. This will give him time to help shape the elections and ultimately the outcome of those elections. What are your thoughts regarding the France-Mali conflict? Should France be more present in Mali and send more troops instead of reducing their troops? Will Mali, without the presence of France or the ECOWAS, be a target for extremists? Should Mali operate by itself? Let us know in the comments. For more interested topic of worldwide politics and economic subjects, like, subscribe, and put your notifications on in order to always be updated of what's going on in the world.